Today's scripture reading comes from Esther chapter 4, verses 9 through 17. Haddock went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai, "All the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that they be put to death unless the king extends the golden scepter to them and spares their lives. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king." When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer, "Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai, "Go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish." So Mordecai went away and carried out all of Esther's instructions. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
Thank you, Hartley, and thank you, Holly, for sharing this information. I know this congregation loves to be a part of something that makes difference in the community, and when Holly and I were talking, she shared about how the situation is of the broken families and a lot of kids that they need to be placed in some safe houses, some temporary with some families, and I just can't imagine what those kids have to go through when the parents are either one of the parents ends up in prison, or there is divorce, or any other situation, maybe addiction or something, and the kids, they are just so much vulnerable, and they need a place, a safe place to be in. And that is where what all these services are about, that they place the kids in the house, and when it's time, they help them reunite with their immediate family. So I believe it's a very, very important work, and we will talk more about how we can be a part of this in future. Let's go to God and pray. Holy and gracious God, we are ready to hear your voice. Thank you for your word. And now we ask that as we reflect on these, as we learn from this text, from the story of a great servant of yours, a great woman of the Bible, Esther, that she spoke and she acted during the time of great need, that you had placed her for that moment, for that need, and she responded, and the difference that made. So help us to be the people of that kind, to speak up where when it's needed, against injustice, against what is needed to be done, and to act. So I ask that you bless all the preparation that I have done during the week, and now you take it from here. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, our rock, our Redeemer. Amen. If you see something, say something. Have you heard that phrase? If you have traveled on train or elsewhere on the airport, I hear it over and over and over and over again. If you see something, say something. Have you been in that situation yourself, that you saw something that was not right, and you spoke about that, you said something, and that made a difference? And it does not have to be that you were in a very promising position, or you were in a prominent position at work or somewhere else, but just being in an ordinary position, you saw something, but in order to make difference, you said something, and that is something that led to change the situation. Or you can think about somebody else who did that and you saw, wow, if that person had not said those words in those moments, the situation might not have changed. Maybe you are the person, you are the recipient of those words. Somebody spoke to you and said, I don't think it looks right. You need to think the other way around. You need to think about other options. And you received those words, you thought about those words, and then you acted on those words, and then later you thought, wow, what if that person had not said these words to me? I would be still in that situation, or might be worse. So this is important. Think about the early Americans, some committed Americans who saw that what was going on was not right, and they thought, they were committed that they needed freedom. They spoke, they acted, and that's where you are today, as a free nation. Think about, go beyond that, before that in the history. Think about Martin Luther King. He was in the Catholic Church. And what he saw, he was determined that what he was seeing was not right and needed to be fixed. He did not keep quiet. He spoke. And then the history changed. And now you're sitting here as the people called Protestants. John Wesley, he was in the Anglican Church. He was a priest in the Anglican Church in England. When he saw that the church, there were things that were not right in the church, he did not keep quiet. He spoke. He spoke, he took action, and then the history changed. And the Methodism was founded. And that's where we are today. The people who call themselves Methodists. And I can say many other names and situations, and list can go on. But the point is, what we are going to talk about this morning is what it may be that God is calling you to speak, or when the situation comes, you are ready to speak and not remain silent and quiet. Because if you see something, say something. And that is what Esther did, and Mordecai did. And the story, this book that tells many of you, I hope that you are familiar with the story. The story takes place when it's during the time when the Persians have taken over and the Babylon government has been overthrown, and the Persians are they're ruling this country all the way. It was the biggest empire of that time, starting from India all the way to Susa. And when the Babylonians were overthrown and the Persians came, and you know the story that the Israelites, the Jews, they were allowed to go back to Jerusalem, where they had been brought as the captives, and only 50,000 people, the Jews, they went back to Jerusalem. Only 50,000. That means that a lot more than a million and more, they had settled themselves in Persia, and they seemed to be doing pretty well, that they chose to stay back, and Esther was one of them. The story is the king Xerxes, he threw a party. It was a big party, long party, many days, 180 days party, celebration, using the government taxes, people's taxes. Now, if you are angry that how the government is using your taxes today, just think about 180 days celebration on government, on people's taxes. 180 days, 6 months. And he was displaying all the glory and all the splendors of his kingdom, of his who he was. And then at the end, then he had another 7-day banquet, 7-day long banquet, and all his nobles and commanders and political and military, they were gathered there. And on the last day, he said, I want you to see the queen. What's she queen? She is the beautiful woman, and I want you to see her beauty. And he called the queen with her crown. Now, the text tells that he called the queen with the crown. Now, many commentators, they believe why the queen had the problem in coming off obeying the king. Many commentators believe that the king wanted the queen to come only in the crown, no dresses, no clothing, because he wanted to display her beauty before those nobles and all the leaders of that time. And the queen, she refused. She did not agree to that, and she refused, and refusing a king was not a good thing at that time, especially the queen. So the king became very, very angry, and he had his people who were on the leadership, who were the experts of the law, and those who were his minister. He consulted with him, and they were, king, this is a big problem. And the problem is it's going to impact all the women, all the wives in your kingdom. And I don't think that the wives will submit to their husband or will obey their husband when they learn that the queen did not obey the king. It is a big problem, and we don't want that. So you need to punish the queen. And it was decided that, okay, so the queen was abandoned, she was put in the harem, and she was never to come before the king. That was her punishment. So she was demoted from the status of being the queen. After some time, the king, he missed the queen, and then the consultants, his courtsmen, they said, King, I think we should look for another wife for you, another queen. And they looked and they looked and they looked, and they invited the most beautiful women in the entire country. They will come and they will pick from them. And Esther was one of them. Some historian, Josephus, he believes that the 400 women from the entire nation, they came to the king, and Esther was picked to be the queen. And she went through a year-long beautification. Men, if you have any problem with your wives, they spend so much time in salon or beauty, think about 1 year, 1 year. She was perfumed. She had to go through a lot of beauty tips and all that. So finally the day came when she was presented before the king, and the king liked her. She had an uncle. His name was Mordecai. Now Esther was Jew. Her uncle was the Jew, but she did not reveal her identity that she was a Jew. Otherwise she won't be probably become the queen. Her uncle, he was sitting at the gate, and one day he heard a conspiracy against the king, that people wanted to assassinate the king. And Mordecai, he heard that conspiracy, and he talked to Esther, sent a message to Esther about that conspiracy. And Esther, she brought the conspiracy to the king and King Xerxes, and the king investigated, and that was true. So Mordecai, Esther told that it was Mordecai who discovered about the conspiracy. Now Mordecai, he was there, and he continued there, and the king did not reward Mordecai at once. But the story goes on, and at some point, Haman, another leader of the king, the king promoted Haman next to the king. And Haman, he did not like the Jews. He did not like the Jews. And the decree issued that everybody in the nation would submit to Haman and bow down before him and kneel down before him. And this guy, Mordecai, he refused to bow down before Haman. He was a Jew, and he only knelt before God, before Yahweh. He only worshipped the Yahweh, and he refused to bow down and kneel before Haman. And Haman took that as an opportunity, and he went to the king, and he said, King, we got a problem. We got to eliminate these people. I will sponsor that, and we got to get rid of all these Jews. And as I said, the Jews were about over 1 million back in Persia. And he said, you issue a decree, and I'm going to go and eliminate all these Jews in the entire empire. And the decree was issued, and at that point, Mordecai sent the message to Esther that this is the time and you need to act, you need to speak up. And if you remain silent, God will help, God will send some other help, but probably God has put you in this position for this very day. Now, the custom at that time was no one could go into the king's presence without king's invitation or calling. Otherwise, they would be killed. And this is what Esther's challenge is. She said, unless I'm being summoned, I'm summoned by the king. If I just go, I can be killed. And he said, you got to do something. That's what Mordecai said. And if you don't do this, God will send some help, but you are put probably for this very day to say something when you see something. So Esther, she said that don't think that because you are in the king's, that's what Mordecai is saying. Esther said, go and gather all the Jews who are in Susa, fast for me, do not eat or drink anything, and my attendants will fast too. And when this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish. So finally, Esther goes to the king, and the king extends his scepter to Esther. That was a sign that her coming to the king was welcomed. The king was not furious or mad and did not kill her, but Esther, she was received. And Esther reported the problem, king, there are people who are against my people and they want to kill them. And since the king, he loved Esther, he said, who is this that he is doing? And so that decree was set aside. And then the king, he gave another party and invited king, in fact it was Esther who threw a party and invited Haman. She knew that was behind that conspiracy of killing the Jews, and she invited him, and he told the king in front of him that he is the one to whom this conspiracy of killing the Jews, he is the one, Haman. Now, in the background, what had happened was when the king was installing Haman to the position next to king himself, the king had asked him, so because he was doing that for Mordecai, when the king learned that Mordecai was the one who discovered that conspiracy, the king had in mind that he was elevating Mordecai to a higher position. And he asked Haman, what should we do with the person to whom the king is pleased and want to give honor? Haman thought that it was about him that king was pleased with and wanted to elevate to even a higher status. He said all the good things the king should give him. The signet ring, the king should give him his robe, and he should have all the escort, and the word should go out, and there should be a banquet. And the king said, okay, go and do that. And during the party that Esther had called in for, Haman was there. On the other side, Haman, in order to kill Mordecai, had installed a pole, and where he would like to kill and put Mordecai on. What happened during that party? Esther said, "King, these people, someone wants to kill my people." And the king asked, "Who is the one who wants to kill them?" She said, "Haman. Haman is the one who wants to kill my people for no reason, because Mordecai refused to pay honor to Haman, and he wants to kill him, and he wants to eliminate all the Jews in Persia." And guess what happened? King said, The same pole that Haman has installed for Mordecai, kill Haman and put Haman on that same pole, very pole that was prepared for Mordecai. And that story goes on. Haman was killed instead of Mordecai. Esther was saved, and the entire Jews were saved of that nation. The point is, think about Esther, that she was put in that position. She was installed as the queen, and God had a reason to put her where she was. During those moments, that if she had held back and had not spoken during that time when it was needed the most, all those Jews might have been killed. But her coming up before the king, her courage that she came, despite the fact that she could be killed, she spoke and she acted, and those Jews were saved. Wherever you are in your life, wherever you are in our work, in your families, in the church, wherever you are a part of, when you see something, say something. Because if you don't say something, the things can continue the way they are. Your boss maybe is doing something. Let me give you an example. This week, I just invited you to join this group. And 3 weeks ago, we put a board up there, and I invited you to sign up for this study. In 2 weeks, only 5 people signed up. Only 5 people signed up for this study. And frankly speaking, I was discouraged. I have done that in the past. I have taught the study during the week, and only 5 or 6 people would become a part of that. And 1 hour study takes about 10 hours to prepare for. It takes about 10 hours to prepare 1 hour study. And I thought, I have to spend 10 hours and only 5 people are interested. Should I do that or not? Should I put that many hours in that and only 5 people are interested? I did not pursue that. I did not pursue that for a week. I said, I don't know if I want to do that or not. Last week, when I was on Wednesday, I was coming and Timmy Osborne, he showed up for the study. We had talked, and I said, Timmy, I will let you know, but he couldn't check the email, and he didn't know that we did not have the study on Wednesday. He showed up. And when I reached office, Ashley, our office assistant, she came to me and she said, hey, I know that it's only 5 people, but I think you should do that. And by the time when I heard about Timmy, I was already convicting myself. Nadeem, I think you were being selfish. You were being selfish. You were thinking about that. You have to put that many hours on study, and only 5 people have signed up. I think you were being selfish. Ashley spoke the same words. She said, Nadeem, I think you should. Timmy showed up, and there may be other people, and I know you have to spend a lot of hours on study and only 5. I know this may be heartbreaking, but I think you should consider it. She spoke what she was feeling was the right thing to say. My own conviction and my own thought that I was thinking that I was being selfish, and her words were affirmation of what I was thinking about myself. She spoke, and maybe if she had not said those words, I might have decided not to do the study. But guess she spoke just simple words. I was not offended. I welcomed what she said. I said, I think you are right. And I literally said to her, Ashley, thank you. I think I was being selfish. That is how you speak when you feel like something is not right and you need to say something. That is how it changes the things. That is what Esther did. That is what Jesus did. When he came, that is what he challenged the authorities. Now, when you speak what you see, what is not right, not everybody is going to like you. And you should be okay with that. Many people did not like Jesus. Actually, he was crucified for what he said, for what he thought that was right. That was his message, and he was crucified for that message. There have been times in my life when I held back myself from saying the right thing that I should have, and I regret it. There are times when I said the right thing and they were they were received. There are times when I say the right things and I'm rejected. People don't like. And I'm okay with that. As a pastor, my job is not to make people love me. That has never been my job description. When I came here, or as a pastor, when I decided, something that I learned early on, that I am not here to make people happy. So say something when you see something. Despite the results, some people like you, what you're saying. If they don't like, that is up to them. If they like, but your job, our job as the follower of Jesus Christ, is not to remain silent. Somebody this morning, and I will close with this, this morning in our Bible study, the one I'm teaching, Revelation, the question was, why the Muslims are increasing in numbers and why the Christians are decreasing. We have chosen to remain silent. A lot of Christians have chosen to remain silent. We have stopped telling the truth out of the fear that people will feel offended. That is one reason. Muslims, they are growing. In America, I was sharing with them that before the 9/11, 25,000 Americans were converting to Islam. After 9/11, it grew up exponentially. 100,000 Americans are converting to Islam every year. And part of the reason is we choose to remain silent. We don't say something when we should say something. So I invite you to think about this wherever you are in your lives. With your kids, when you see something is not right, you got to say something. With your coworkers, when you see something is not right, you got to say something. With your political leaders, when you see something, you got to say something, despite the fact that people like you or not. Your job, our job, is to share the truth. Amen.